Greetings, everyone. Welcome to Artcasters number 282. We have a very familiar face, familiar guest back on the show, and I'm happy to talk to him because I haven't got to talk to him too much. Although he was on the show last week, but Cory's back as our guest. We'll get to Cory because he's kind of picked out a topic for us, and I'm going to let him lead us into that topic. But we're going to do what we always do. We're just going to kind of go around the panel here and let everyone pitch anything or talk about anything they got going on. You're on my channel, so I will kick it off. On this channel, you'll find Making Comics 101, which is my series on how to make comics on YouTube. It's a pretty much step-by-step, everything from coming up with your ideas all the way to the finished product of creating comics. So definitely check that out. The other thing that's going on right now, if you go to I believe it's surprisecomics.com. That's my local comic store, but they also sell online. But I have a cover for Betty and Veronica Summer Fun that I've done the cover for, and it is a limited amount of 250 copies, so it's a little bit rare. And so I think it's going to retail for like $15, but $5 of that goes to Next for Autism. So if you want to check that out, and that the donation to Next for Autism only goes until July 4th. So you definitely want to get that before then, so that money, that $5 will go to a good cause. And it doesn't get cheaper after that. It just goes back to Surprise Comics or whoever. So definitely get that before the 4th if you want to also benefit Next for Autism. And that's all I got to promote today. What about you, Josh?
Cool. I want to reiterate what you just said because I just ordered it like after our last stream, and I'm so excited whenever it arrives because it's cool and it's fun to see Scott. Like, I think fans of this show and who watch it would dig it because it's like getting to see Scott play in the playground of like a really big property, and I think he did a really very Circleland-esque job at it, and it looks awesome. So
thank you.
I'm stoked about it.
Oh, another thing, let me add real quick. I think whatever the Saturday is before, or I think that's the third, is Saturday the 3rd? I don't remember, but I think I'm going to be doing a store signing there. So if you want to get it signed, and I'm also doing remarks, drawing little sketches on the actual covers and things. If you watch I think that was my latest video where I showed me working on those. You'll be able to, if you're in the Arizona area, the Phoenix metropolitan area out in Surprise, you can come out and see me and get that signed. So, and Gary Hodges is there. Hey, Gary, come on down to Surprise.
Yeah, dude, yeah. Gary should.
Actually, Gary, you should definitely come out with your comic. We'll see, and I'll introduce you to the owners and everything because, he'd love to have more artists and everything do stuff. So definitely, hit me up, Gary. Sorry, Josh. Sorry to butt in. But
no. Dinosaurs versus Mars bots. Gary Hodges. Everybody should go check it out. And I will tell you, I have a really strong suspicion the third issue is going to be really good. All right. So speaking of signings, so that's if you're in Arizona on the 14th of July. If you're in Long Beach, my old neighborhood, which is like one of my favorite cities on earth. I'll be doing a signing at Pulp Fiction Comics on the 14th from 11 to 7 p.m. And so I'll be mentioning that until there. So if you're in the LA area, but you're more towards, the Long Beach area or like Huntington Beach or any of that, like, even Los Angeles, honestly, it's a little bit better of a drive than the Lancaster signings. So I hope to see all of my LA and Long Beach peeps there. Before I drop my thing, I also just want to give a real quick shout out because I literally opened this today. And this was a bit that we mentioned on our live stream, like on my live stream, where we were making a joke about chick tracts and how corny they are. And then we were somehow joking about this idea of like, what if they made ones that were like Pokemon cards? And Frank was like, I'm going to make those. And I was like, do it. And he did. And he sent me these hand-drawn Pokemon cards. So here's Frank. There's one of Gary Hodges, which I just thought was awesome. They have like little Poke Souls on the back. Frank himself. Scott Strickland himself.
Oh,
And then Kid Josh. And I just I don't know, man. It's always a kick to get like fan art in the mail. So and from somebody awesome like Frank, it's flattering, and it's also funny because I'm like, now I have a little card collection of everybody. So
that's awesome. And just sorry, I'm going to break in and do another quick promotion for myself. I'm going to be on Frank's Tarocco Creative Cast on Monday.
yes,
So yeah,
that's awesome. And then he sent me a bunch of awesome minis too. So thank you, Frank. And yeah, go check out Tarocco too. And then the last thing, I know it's like a long-winded one at the beginning, but the last thing is my book, Two Stories, which you can. It's my graphic novel about faith and mental illness that I handwrite, hand letter, and hand ink, and can now hand to you. And the best way to hand it to you is through Amazon, because if you have Prime, you get free shipping. And right now it's at like a crazy cheap rate. So if you want to save some money and get a really good book for like a little over what you'd pay for like a Frappuccino, go do that. And other than that, you can get it at other comic shops and things like that. Sorry, that was a really long-winded one. Should we introduce our guest?
Yeah. Oh, I can do it. I thought since you were going, you were going to introduce him. Since you were just talking, I can introduce Cory. So our guest today, you all know and love him, Cory Kerr. How's it going, Cory? You got anything you want to promote?
No, same old stuff. You can just go to CoryKerr.com for all the things. Yeah, Instagram and YouTube and whatnot. Free comics on there to read and free animations to watch. So
awesome. So I reached out to you because I'm it's my goal to kind of have you on. Usually when I'm doing the show, at least have you on every maybe other show or every third show that you're on, just because I'm not doing, when we used to do 48-hour art check, and now you guys are doing something, and I eventually I'd like to actually show a book on the independent comics review show, but I am not prepared for that anytime in the near future. So in effort to talk to my buddy, I want to have Cory on more often, and so I asked him what topic he might want to talk about, and he brought up toxic creativity, and I'm going to let him lead into that because I understand it's based on a book that you've been reading. And so if you want to and you're going to have to excuse the dogs. I'm in a different location today. We've got 4 dogs running around. So
I think they're just really big fans of the topic.
Yes.
You know, they're like, that's right. Toxic creativity. Okay.
yeah. So there's kind of a lot of things. I mean, I've talked about this a little bit, but there's this idea of there's like an alarm going off in my house, and no one upstairs is paying attention to it. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but it's like driving me
it's
nuts.
okay. I was distracted by the dogs. I think we're okay.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, but like it's this. So there's this concept, right, of like there's this balance, and I think it's one of those things where something good has been taken and mutated to be something bad. Because I think people should make things, and I think they should be creative, and I think setting goals and working towards those goals is good, right? So I think all of that is really good. But there's kind of this like it's kind of cropped up in the last couple of years. They'll call it like performative workaholism. And
that was pretty accurate, Frank.
Yes. And it's actually means wild dog. And so I would appreciate the actual growl if you say my last name that way. That would be great.
Or you could just do the old tongue roll, like the like that kind of thing. Yeah.
So anyway, so like performative workaholism, or kind of the worshiping at the altar of busy, or like busy culture, toxic hustle culture. Those have all been around for a little bit, and it's basically the idea of like bragging about how little sleep you're getting, bragging about like how stressed out you are, kind of using the fact that you're burning the candle at both ends, or whatever, as kind of like a badge of honor. If you mix that with the idea of like the suffering artist, this idea that like, and you hear phrases like this in comics and stuff, where it's like comics is a cruel mistress and things like that. There's this idea that I think I had until the last couple of years. I had some of this, not intentionally, but I think I had some of this kind of work into the way that I like spoke about things and the way that I was feeling about things, because I used, when I started drawing and when I got into comics, into creating comics, I was doing it as a way to like self-medicate. Like I was doing it as a way to, like feel better about things and make stuff to kind of like overcome some challenges that I was having in my life and things like that. That kind of metastasized into just like an unhealthy way to look at creativity, where you have to like suffer for your art and you have to, but like, it's interesting because I think part of it is kind of wrapped up in like in imposter syndrome. Part of it is wrapped up in like, as you're learning how to do something, if you know what you're talking about, you know that you're not good. And like, I was aware, very aware of like my faults and flaws. And so like, very rarely did I make something that I liked. I enjoyed the process and I enjoyed the improvement, from one thing to the next thing. But very, very seldom was I like, that's a cool thing that I made. Anyway, so that kind of fed into like The War of Art, which is still a book that I really love. But it talks about like kind of, it looks at, like your daily struggle to be creative as a battle, as a war, and a lot of that, kind of like negative combative energy is still in there. And I think a lot of that book, and I still like that book, and I think a lot of it is really helpful. But if taken to an extreme, I think it can get into this idea of what I'm kind of calling like toxic creativity, where you're basically only focusing on the negative sides of things. And that doesn't mean to say that those go away if you focus on the positive sides of things. But I read this book, Big Magic, right? And it was actually recommended by Sean Crystal, who does Ink Pulp Audio. And or I guess it's the Ink Pulp Creative Podcast now or something, because he's doing a video with it as well. But he went through this process, and I felt like what he was going through was very similar to what I was going through for completely different reasons. And I watched him kind of come full circle, and he just all of a sudden was really positive. And I was like, oh, this is kind of weird. And so he mentioned this book, and so I read this book, and it's from the lady who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, which I've never read and have almost no interest in. But she talks about creativity in an interesting way, because my favorite part of The War of Art that Stephen Pressfield talks about is this idea of the muse, or the genius, or creativity as a source of inspiration that's available to everyone. It's not something that's intrinsic. It's something that you can tap into with certain practices and whatnot. But she has a whole section of that book where she talks about, the idea of the martyr versus the trickster, the struggling, starving artist versus, somebody who's got that type of thing. And I've been reading a lot of stuff on neurological thinking and just for years, by way of like trying to teach better and trying to do things that help people learn well. And so kind of getting into this, and if you look at like what Carol Dweck wrote about grit, and what other people are saying, about kind of the open and closed mindset, and some people call it like a scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset. You have like people like Sean West podcast, talks about that a lot. Anyway, all of this kind of wrapping up into this thing, as I was reading Big Magic, I realized that I have long since progressed past a lot of those toxic notions of creativity, those kind of negative reinforcing behaviors that I was doing to motivate myself. And I had moved into a place where I was still enjoying the results of the art, but I was actually enjoying the art as well. I was actually enjoying the process of creation a lot more when I'm doing my own stuff than when I'm getting paid to do stuff, which has been the last 3 months of my life. Is like every waking moment is working on somebody else's project. But it was just interesting to see that I was still saying the things that I used to feel and believe, but I had moved on past those things, and I no longer feel like I am desperately clutching to some creative life preserver so that I don't drown, which was kind of like where I was 8 years ago, and now I'm not there anymore. I mean, I can take time off and I'm fine. I can work hard and enjoy it. And so it was just kind of this idea of, embracing the fun and positive side of creating art, like it's fun to do it. And, and before, when I was in a darker place, I wasn't in a mindset where I could enjoy that. I was in kind of this mindset where I was making things because, it was the thing that kept the darkness at bay. So it was more of a battle and more of a fight. And I don't think I'm less productive now. I think I'm just as productive, or even in some cases more productive than I was when I was, it's like my wife's therapist. She stopped running at one point, and she was kind of beating herself up for it. And he told her, I don't think you have anything to run from anymore. So if you want to run, go ahead and run, but like, you're not running from anything anymore. And so it's just kind of like, it's kind of that feeling. I don't know where to take it from there, but that's kind of just this realization that I've been having over the past couple months, that I've gotten to the point where I really like doing this stuff, and I'm doing it because I like it. It makes me feel good, and I like the results that I get, and I'm enjoying some of the things that I'm creating. And I'm still able to see some of the flaws and some of that, but being able to kind of like enjoy and have fun with the process is a new angle. It's kind of a new angle for me. So that's kind of where I wanted to. There's my handoff. I don't know where to go.
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely feel you. I've been like, I just graduated from my transformational leadership community that the program that I've been involved in for the past 3 months or so. And it's changed my whole perspective on a lot of things. And one of those things was sort of what you're calling that toxic creativity, where I was very much, I don't think I was like Gary Vee status as far as hustle culture, that type of thing. But I was like, I got to do. And what I've came to realize is that what I've learned from this leadership program is that it's not coming from a state of doing, it's coming from a state of being. And it basically goes like this: be, do, have. So it's how you're being, and then from that, then that's what you do, and then you have what you want from that. But it's all very much based on, who are you? What are you being? Like, are you being confident? Are you being trusting? Are you being abundant? And then from there, as a way of being, you just naturally go in, and then that goes into the doing part. But it's not so much just do. And it just seems like things happen a lot smoother that way. And another thing, and there's a lot of other things that just occupied a lot. Like I was like, oh, I got to get this done, and all this stuff. And I realized, just stepping back and just coming from a place of being. And the other thing that I'm doing is I started watching some stuff on minimalism. Did I bring this up last? I don't know. I may have brought that up to Cory after the show. Yeah. So when I got back from this training after I graduated, one of the things I wanted to do is just like kind of reevaluate, like for instance, my house. Like I've just got a bunch of I'm not like a hoarder, but I've got just a bunch of junk that I never use, and a lot of it is because I'm a creative and I'm like, and I like to build things, so I save a bunch of stuff. Like, oh, I might be able to use this down the road, and I've just got so much stuff, and like to the point where, and it's not just all things that I plan on using for creative purposes, but like even my pantry was a big problem. Like I was like playing Tetris when I opened my pantry doors to find things. Like I had all these spices all over the place, and literally I'd open up and things would fall out and break and all this. It was just like a disaster, and my whole kitchen was like that, and my whole house is kind of like that. So I decided, you know what I'm going to do? I started watching some videos on minimalism, and some of that stuff's really hardcore. I'm not going to go that far into it.
Wait. So you went all Marie Kondo? That's awesome.
No, well, it's not Marie Kondo, because Marie Kondo is more organization. I think I'm going to go a little bit more in the middle, but minimalism, and I think Kevin adopted this a while back, because he was talking about this, where he just gave up a bunch of his crap, you know. But so basically minimalism is just basically not just organizing stuff, but getting rid of most of it. So I'm not going to go that far into it, and there will be some organization, but and I haven't watched any of the Marie Kondo stuff. But
okay, because she's all about like you take like 10 items,
yeah,
and you pick the one that you like that means something to you, and if any of them have any like slight doubt of meaning, you just throw them away or get rid of them. Yeah. So she's all about kind of decluttering and getting rid of half your crap. If you're on a minimalism kick though, and this is just for anyone, dude, if you want to like just have some fun, pick up some Henry David Thoreau, and like that'll get you on a hardcore minimalism kick.
Yeah, I don't want
one of the things I like about Josh is he just said, if you would like to have some fun, pick up some Thoreau. That's
hey, Thoreau's fun. He is fun.
But you know, so basically, I mean, I literally, since I got back a week ago, the majority of my time is spent just going through my house, and it's taking a lot of time. But what I'm finding out is it's also saving me a lot of time, and it will save me a lot of time in the future, because I'm, you know, like when I go in the pantry, it's just like I can find anything real quick, even like and I think like a lot of like billionaires and like Steve Jobs, and I think even Einstein, I think they talk about where they only had like one kind of suit or one kind of clothes, so they didn't have to spend time picking out their clothes. So I didn't go that crazy, but I did go through my closet, got rid of a bunch of stuff, and just organized, like, actually, because before I would just put stuff in my closet just all haphazard, and I'd be going through looking for shirts and stuff. So now they're all like all my white shirts, my blue shirts, my black shirts, and then a couple red and green. But and the graphics are all facing the same direction. So I just look and I just pull out what I want.
Have you bought a T-shirt folder yet?
I don't know what that is. It's like something that folds T-shirts.
Yeah,
I hang up my T-shirt. I don't usually fold them, but
yeah, I've got a T-shirt folder, and it's put all. Okay, I want to hit.
Forget T-shirt folders. Yeah. Look up a video of Japanese T-shirt folding. It's like a 2 swipe process, and you perfectly fold a T-shirt. It's really cool. Anyhow, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so Jim has a good comment, which I want to get to in a minute. But
Gary had a good one too. Yeah.
So Gary says, it feels like a difficult question. At this stage, I'm result oriented. So my feeling is if you're getting the result you want, the process, tranquil bliss or cocaine haze is irrelevant. I kind of disagree with that because I think getting the results you want, I think, is good, right? But I do think that the process and the journey matters. And so, because some of our projects are months or years long. And so if you're killing yourself to get to the result and then you get to the result, like, was the result worth it? Or, is spending an extra month on it, but enjoying the process better? So I don't know. So there's some of that, but then I really like, I think the danger, if there is one, is misidentifying what is important to your process. For example, comedians who think that if they got sober, they wouldn't be funny. And this is where in this book, Big Magic, she actually quotes a ton of different types of artists, poets and fictional writers and painters and photographers and and people who, are saying all these things like, if I get emotionally healthy, I'm worried that, that it won't work out anymore. Like there was a guy who said, if I ever chase my demons away, I feel like my angels will leave with them. And it's kind of this idea that like exactly this, comedians are worried that, if I stop living hard and beating myself up and being toxic, then I'll lose that edge and lose being funny. And I know a lot of artists who kind of feel like that. But I feel like what he's saying here is, when that actually doesn't have anything to do with it. I agree. I think a lot of that tends to get in the way more than it helps. And so that's kind of the idea is, are you misidentifying the negativity that comes with the creation and misattributing the stuff that's actually getting in your way, as part of it. And then and then Jim has this, and I'm curious on what you guys think about this. Do you think creativity is about working at attaining a certain state, or is it about letting go, and by letting go, you attain that state?
Okay. I have a couple.
I have thoughts, but I'm curious on what you guys
I want to chime in with a slight contrarian viewpoint to what's been expressed. So I know of a million examples of musicians. Metallica would be perfect, actually. Metallica was amazing, thrashy, angsty, amazing. The singer got sober. The band kind of sucked. They started writing songs like Unforgiven 2. Are You Unforgiven 2? And it was the sequel to Unforgiven. They and they seem a lot happier and wealthier, but their music has suffered heavily. Now, I don't know if their fuel was alcohol, and I think it could be argued here's the thing. Whatever your fuel is, if that's what you succeed with, you might be stuck with that fuel. And so that would be the one way I'd kind of reiterate what Cory's saying, where it's if your fuel is killing yourself to make it, you could end up stuck in a scenario where you have to do that to get the result. And that has a pretty predictable result. So I would say find a different fuel early on so that you can learn to make good music without that terrible fuel. I also want to say, I agree about I just did a video recently about thankfulness, and that I forget to be thankful for things like my job as an art director is a pretty awesome job. It's pretty fun. We make cool stuff. There's high stakes to it, but overall, at the end of the day, most of the time my concerns are how quickly can we make awesome graphic designs, and a lot of them, or draw. And it's that's pretty cool. I kind of forget and get complacent and get a bad perspective on it sometimes rather than be thankful. And not just with that, with a lot of things. And so I've been having this really cool experience doing store signings where I'm not going in with any expectations. I'm not going in I'm going to make a crap load of money and I'm going to sell some comics and then I'm going to get really famous and stuff like that. I'm just going in for the experience of I'm lucky to have this opportunity to sit at a comic shop and meet fellow nerds and hopefully sell some books. And if I sell some books, cool. And if not, it was a really cool experience hanging out at a comic shop, which when I was a kid, I used to on Wednesdays, I would bike to the comic shop. I'd volunteer, help them stock books because I just liked hanging out in there and looking at books. So it's I'm doing something I would have killed to do as a kid. And yet I can forget to be thankful. So in that sense, I agree, but I do think misattributing, this is where and I'm sure you can kind of chime in on this too, but for me, I fear the misattribution of happiness with art. And,
Right.
And I do think anything worth its salt, anything at all worth its salt is not going to be happiness the whole way through. If you do a marathon and you're really working out and you're getting results, it's going to suck. There are points where it will suck. And if you think about the suckiness of it, you're going to fail that marathon. But at the same time, it's like, there's going to be times where it's grueling and it's work. And if it's not that, you might not be running enough, so that's where I get a little weird, because I do think I instantly think of like the kind of hippy dippy version of art, where it's like the person who shows up to a coffee shop, they're like, I'm an artist because I draw when I kind of feel like it. And you know what I mean? Like that, that's the extreme. And it freaks me out a little bit that the writer's the Eat, Pray, Love one, because she gets a little on that.
And it's really interesting. It's really interesting because she actually is an exceptionally driven person when it comes to writing. And she talks about writing in a very Stephen Pressfield War of Art way. And she has a whole chapter called Shiz Sandwich, which is like, you've got to sit down and eat the crap and enjoy eating the crap, because that's part of it. And so it's for me, I think toxic creativity and the cult of busy and a lot of that is actually a very effective way to be productive. It's just not a healthy way to live your life. And so I think you can take, like, this is one of those things where if I were to let the pendulum swing too far, then I would, I'd clear this room out, and I would play video games when I got home, and I'd take naps, and I'd go kayaking all the time, and I'd never draw or animate again.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is incremental course adjustments in the way that I'm thinking about what I'm doing, but I'm actually still doing the same behaviors. I'm still as productive or more productive than I was before. Because I'm not hitting slumps as hard as I used to. I'm not hitting, some of those things as hard because I'm not as wrapped up in it as I used to be, but I am still spending, 3 to 5 hours a day doing it after I do my full-time job.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the trick. And I'm glad you brought this up, because if you are randomly an artist, like when lightning strikes and when you feel the mood, I think you are a recreational pursuer, and that's fine. But if you want to achieve anything and really be artistic, then that is a lifestyle that you live. Living a creative life is a series of choices that you make every day. Yeah. What I'm talking about is not throwing that out and saying like, I only do it when it's fun, when it feels good. Like there are many, many days where I don't want to do it, but I still do it because I enjoy the process, and most of it is because I don't enjoy starting. And so it's just a shift in, like, I'm not beating myself up as much, but I'm still trying not to lose that edge.
That's so good. Because and I'm glad you clarified that, because that definitely resonates with me a lot. And I've talked about this on the channel and stuff, but so I'm currently like in the process of like, getting tested for possibly being autistic. And there's one thing that I often make a mistake of, especially now that I'm starting to realize that it's pretty likely that I'm autistic. So I was at a get together with some friends recently. We're all vaccinated. It's awesome. We can be like maskless and hang out. It's kind of amazing. And one of them was talking about kind of lamenting not being able to work out. And they're having some health issues and stuff. I'm not going to disclose like who or anything. But for me, it was weird to hear, because I was like, what helped me was just to decide like, hey, I'm just going to do this. And then I did it for like 2 days, and then it was just set in stone. And that's what I did every day, like every other day. And even today, I would have biked today. Like I finally started the biking thing, and I would have biked today, except my tire was flat. So now I have to change a bike tire. But the second I get that changed out, it's not going to be as difficult for me to make that an every other day habit than a lot of people. And this is a weird thing, but it's like, that's actually an advantage I have, probably because I am pretty autistic. Like I do really well with taking a habit and repeating it. And so with like comics, and then the way my brain works, like when I set a schedule, like beat myself up or not, like I am going to hit that schedule like 9 times out of 10, because that's just the way I am. I make the mistake of inferring that everyone's like that. But I also have totally had times where I've like gotten in a bad frame of mind and like beaten myself up because I'm like running on 3 hours of sleep. And I'm like, well, why couldn't I have just powered through and gotten this thing done? And you have to kind of be your own advocate and your own kind of person to watch out for your health. Cause like, what good is that 3 hours of sleep and pushing yourself beyond burnout going to do for your long-term work? Because at the end of the day, if you completely burn out or you lose your health or you lose that kind of thing, you don't really get much of a reward. The other thing is, like, if you write the most brilliant thing on earth or make the most brilliant piece of art on earth, the last thing I want to be is like was it Hemingway who like blew his brains out with a gun? And I mean, in his lifetime, he was being taught in colleges and high schools. Like he was a literary classic in his own lifetime, which barely happens to any writer. Do you want to be that driven to the work and the art that there's definitely a balance. And obviously, if you look at many successful artists throughout the year, or throughout the years, like making like great art is not the answer to everything in life. I mean, if it were, you'd have every great artist just being completely content and like, so there's more to it. And it would be a shame. And I've mentioned this, Cory, you've read this stuff too, but it's like, they've done studies on people when they're on their deathbeds and like what they regret the most. And it's rarely somebody saying like, I wish I had worked harder at work, or like, even artists, like, I don't think most of them are like being like, I wish I had just done that extra book. Like most of them are thinking like, man, I really loved this person. I wish I had spent more time with them. I wish I had listened to this person more. I wish I had hung out with my kid more. It's usually like more relational things. But it's like, as a person who values art and all that, and now I'm rambling, but as a person who values like both, it's like, I agree. I think like it is really a perspective shift, and also just like a thankfulness kind of thing where it's like, we're so lucky. Like we really are fortunate to like, all three of us are doing creative jobs. And that's how we eat. And that's insane. Like that in itself is like a huge, cool opportunity we should be thankful for. Right. And then we also are able to carve out time to do things. And then we also have like functioning hands and function, like at least temporarily, who knows, but it's like, we have air to breathe. We aren't having trouble breathing while we're doing these things. Like there's so many things that it's really corny to say, but it's like, we really are fortunate. And when we forget that, you can get in this like negativity dump, and it can be really toxic. And if that's your fuel, I agree with you, Cory. I've used that as fuel in the past, and like it usually has a very sure ending, which is like very quick burnout, very frequent burnout, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of big highs and big lows.
I want to hear what Scott says here, but
me too.
I like the idea of fuel because there's certain types of fuel where I can get a lot of speed and power out of my vehicle, and it's destroying the engine. I mean, like I can dump jet fuel in my motorcycle, and I will go very fast for a short period of time, and then my bike will be done.
Yeah, and it messes up your steering, right? Right. Yeah.
So I don't know. What are you thinking, Scott?
Yeah, I mean, so for me, I think a lot of it, I mean, and I was definitely very much, like I talked before about the do, and just, trying to schedule all my time and do all this. And I think for me, a lot of it lately is just kind of surrendering to the process.
Yes.
I mean, and I find that I'm still being productive, and just because I'm coming from a place of being creative, of being trusting, being open and just being abundant. It's like, that perpetuates itself, and it just shows up. So where it's almost like I don't have to work as hard. I don't have to do all the doing part of it. It starts to show up. And when I kind of like, I had a goal that I was supposed to meet. I was supposed to meet X amount of dollars with my passive income, and at the end of this 3-month period that I was going to do. And the first 2 months I wasn't anywhere near that. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to hit my goal. But then I just kind of surrendered to it, and I'm like, no, yeah, I am going to hit the goal, and I'm creating all the things that I said that would help me meet that goal. And but what ended up happening was I had all these things that I was supposed to do that theoretically would have brought in more money and allowed me to reach that goal. And I probably only completed about maybe half to a third of those things, but the end goal of that X amount of dollars that I was supposed to earn from my passive income showed up anyway. So I didn't have to do all the work. You can't, and I don't want this to sound like the secret or anything where you just like, oh, I just put this out there and then it'll come. There is, you do have to act on it. You do have to pursue it. It's not just waiting for things to happen. But as you're coming from a place of being, and as you're then doing whatever you have to do to try to accomplish your goal. Like I said, I didn't have to hit all those things. I just kind of surrendered, and it showed up. And what I'm finding now is that I don't want to just work to work. I want, kind of like what Cory was saying, I want there to be a meaning, and I want there to be enjoyment out of it. Not that I didn't get enjoyment before, but I was definitely a lot of, I have to do this. I have to do this. And really, I don't have to do that. I mean, now it's so much better that now I can just, if I want to, and this is what I'm striving for. My big thing that I'm shooting for is I want to have freedom and abundance. I want to have the freedom to where if I decide, I don't want to work today, I want to go and meet up with a friend, or if I want to take some time off and do a mini vacation, or if I decide that I want to, travel, if I want to go out and hang out with Josh in California, or whatever the case is, that I can do that. And I'll be able to be in a position where I can do that, where, if I build these passive income streams, then
you should email Pulp Fiction and see if you can come up on the 14th with me. That'd be fun.
Oh yeah.
It's Long Beach, but
yeah. Well, I have to talk to you a few things about that after the show, but yeah. I mean, we talked about doing a convention and everything, but yeah, that's what I want. I want to do that with my art. I want my artwork to, to generate that kind of income, but I don't want to be in a position where I'm always working I work and then the money comes in. I want to build things, and I want to put those out in the world and have those continue to bring in money, and then build new things. But I don't want to be a slave to, I have to do this in order to bring in money. So for me, it's a little bit of letting go. It's a little bit of working smarter, not harder. And that's sort of where I am, and I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying the, we've talked about this before, and I know Josh, you bring it up quite a bit about sort of the kind of that keeping up with the Joneses aspect, where your neighbor buys a big truck, so you got to buy a big truck, and you had mentioned that that's really not what you're looking for. And to me, it wasn't either. Like, I don't need all these toys and things, but at some point, what I would like to do is I'd like to be able to, maybe like get like a Airstream or something, and kind of create a mobile studio where I can go, where I can be able to create what I want and just enjoy time with my family, with my girlfriend, and do all that stuff. So I'm at a point where I just want, in the future, I'm not quite there yet, but I want to be in a position where I can do that and still be creative and still, create
Yeah.
the things I want to create, but not just be a slave to a daily grind all the time.
Yeah.
A self-imposed daily grind. I mean, I'm not even working I'm working for myself, but I still impose that on myself, which,
Yeah.
you know, yeah. So that's kind of where I am right now.
Yeah. I relate to that. I don't even know if I'm as far as you on that process, but there's a few things I've realized. Like one is like even how my wife and I like ended up with a house. Like I never thought it was never a goal to have a house. But I came up with a plan, and like this was when Ben was first born and stuff, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get a job that pays like X amount. Like, and I'm a creative at this point, like adjuncting at art schools, which sounds cool if you've never adjuncted for art schools. Um, but I was like, I'm gonna get X amount of pay. I'm gonna move here. I'm gonna save up this amount. So I moved with my mom, which is like I swallowed my pride. I was like, okay, I'm gonna move here. Within a year, I'll have saved up this amount. That'll be the down payment for a house. We'll find a house. We'll buy a house. We'll make it happen. And it isn't a secret, but with that intention and that map, we made it happen. And with art money, like no inheritance, no like anything, like art money made that happen. I don't know how, but it happened. I think some of it's providence for sure. Like I don't think everything works like that for everyone. I think if you're in like Uganda and you're living in the middle of nowhere and there's no food, I think you could have all the intention in the world and you're still in a crappy situation, and that's what I hate about The Secret, right? Is like it kind of forgets like that there are people in like impoverished areas where like you can have all the intention in the world. If a bomb drops on your house, like you're like, sorry, like that's not your intention that brought that bomb to your house, but I will say in my own lifetime, and a lot of this brings to my faith as well, but it's like I do think that when I forget the anxiety, which we waste so much resources on anxiety, on fear and worry, and kind of like it's either and almost every creative I meet does this, where it's like we're alternating from depression to anxiety, and it's like from future to past. But like we're really bad at living in the present. And part of that's because to do art, it requires tons of back planning, right? Like if Scott's going to do a next Young and the Dead issue, you have to think like 20 steps ahead to make that happen. Like that's how you can actually like actuate crazy ideas, is like you think, here's my end result, here's where I am, here's all the 10 steps I need to get get there. But yeah, like I think what what you're describing and what Cory's describing is kind of like that Bruce Lee idea of like being like water, where it's like if you allow for life, you actually get more done in life. Like a case in point, like we had, like with the house comes all these responsibilities, right? Like so the other day we had like a knob break on the shower, and that ended up being like $800 just instantly. And things like that happen in life. Like your car's going to break down, like stuff that's unplanned is going to happen. If you're inflexible with your plans and your intentions, that's going to lead to a lot of resentment, because it's like, you're going to be like, I was so close, and then this thing, right? And you see it all the time where somebody's like, another thing. And I meet really bitter like very old people. In fact, one of my grandparents ended up like that, like very bitter. One of them ended up really happy. And the bitter grandparent that I had that attitude of like, oh, it's another thing that's like taking me away from my thing. Like, and the other one just kind of rolled with it. Like was like, okay, I'm going to go to like the senior center and like, I'm going to play some cards. I'm going to rock this business. Like, like it's and I see that in myself, like the poles of where I could go. But like for me, I definitely want to end up on that route of like, of being more comfortable with like whatever life throws at you. but also confidence in your intention, because the confidence is going to get you a lot further than like a bunch of wavering and doubt. And I've rarely been rewarded for self-doubt, you know. I know that's a long rant, but this is a really good topic. Sorry. That's what I do. But yeah, I really, I hope that I don't know if I'm completely missing the point, but I feel like I vibe with what you're saying, Scott. And I've come to that a lot myself. And it is something I think for me, I'm a skeptic. I naturally am very drawn towards negativity. And so it requires like intention for me to avoid going down the path of looking at the thing I haven't achieved as opposed to the things I have, or looking at the stumbling blocks instead of looking at the things that I've overcome, you know? And I think if you're kind of working on being present and, like you were saying, as corny and like cheesy as it sounds, like actualizing, like envisioning what you want, and making sure it's something you sincerely want, right? Like envisioning how it's going to happen, and then being comfortable with how it's going to, like you were saying, you're like, oh, it's not going to happen because the blah, 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 like came up. And you're like, no, it'll happen. Right. And if it hadn't happened the month you intended and you kept that attitude, like weirdly enough, it probably would have happened in 2 months. Like it is a weird thing about how we can kind of create our own, yeah. Anyhow, rambling. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think you have to recognize that too, because the story about the shower knob. I mean, that happened to me too, where I had a crown that came out, and my sister-in-law works for a dentist, and she said, "Oh, if you still have the crown, you can come in, and it'll probably be about $150 or whatever." So I go in there. Turns out the crown, I waited too long or something. The crown didn't fit back on, so it's going to be like $800. And I'm like, okay, yeah, well, geez. And it just so happened that I just got a $800 royalty payment from Design Cuts. So you can look at that as a couple different ways. You can look at it like, oh, I just got this money and now it's out the window. Or you can look at it, what's the opportunity here? I needed $800. $800 shows up. So it's
100%.
It's how you look at it. And you can also look at it this way. Okay, $800 showed up. What did I do to create that $800? That's the products that I made. Those products are still out there generating money. So there's no reason why I can't make that money again or make more money by creating more products or whatever the case is. So it's really looking at the opportunity of any situation. I mean, you can say you can be a victim, and you can say, oh, yeah, I had to, I could have spent this $800 on something else, but I needed that $800, and the $800 showed up. So it's victim versus, we look at it as victim versus responsibility. So
I agree with that.
Are you responsible, or are you just being a victim? And
totally, I agree with that too. And a lot of it has to do with lists. Like, are you making a list of good, or are you making a list of every wrong? Right. And I as somebody who like I'm prone to like depression and stuff like that. Like if I get in like a very depressive state, a big tip off for myself is if I'm like making lists of like all the wrongs. And the second you're making a list of all the wrongs, like you're probably not thinking straight, because you're kind of skipping over all the rights, right? And so like Scott was saying, you could look at it like, oh man, I just worked so hard to get this $800, now it's gone. Or you could look at it like, isn't that awesome that like I needed $800 and then it just kind of showed up? Like, and I agree with that. Like, I think it's like a difference between like viewing things as providence. And there's a biblical backing behind that too. Like there's this whole idea of like, and whether you think it's myth or real or whatever, I think it's valuable. Like, but it's like, there's this whole idea of like there's a tale of like the Egyptians, like kind of enslaving the Israelites. And then they kind of finally get free, and they're hungry and they're complaining about the food. and they don't have food, and they've been wandering in the desert for like 40 days, and they start getting manna, like just raining from heaven, sent by God. Now, keep in mind, like, I'm not trying to tell people that this is real or anything like that, but I think there's a lesson from it. It's like, and all the people who are getting this like literal miracle, like food is raining from heaven, is complaining about the taste of it's just, I mean, we were hungry, but like, this sucks. Like, and they're kind of just losing sight of the fact that like you literally had no food. You asked for food, and food fell from the sky. And I find that to be true of my own life, where I'll have like a provision arrive, and I will sometimes forget to be like, that is really cool that arrived. Like, and instead I'll be like, oh, this tastes bad. Or like, I'll get a comic book store signing, right? Like I said, when I was younger, I used to do those signings with like this intention of like, man, I'm going to be a rock star. Like, everybody's going to love me. And anybody who's done an in-store signing, even at a hip shop, it's fairly slow. And most of the time you're there, it doesn't feel like you're doing a ton of sales. Cause like in the morning, most people are coming, like if you're doing it, especially on a packed day, it's going to be a Wednesday, right? So on a morning, you're going to have like this slow trickle of people who are like sneaking in right before work. And it feels slow as a snail's pace. At lunch, everybody's sneaking in to get in at their lunch. So the whole time you're there, you feel like you're doing no sales. And then the end of the day, you look at your sales and you're like, holy crap. Like, yeah, I sold a lot of books. And you'd sell less if you're looking at like, nobody's here. I've been sitting at this table, right? Like if your attitude is bad, you actually do worse. If your attitude's good, like weirdly enough, by the end of the day, you kind of do what you intended to do. So anyhow, I've been rambling a lot, but a long-winded way of saying like, I agree with you, Scott.
Yeah. And Holly brings up a point. She was saying how she has a friend that's a witch and casts spells, and she doesn't believe in that. But the thing is, if you do, and I don't believe in, witchcraft or anything like that, but if you believe in it strongly enough, then it'll probably materialize. I mean, to a certain extent. I mean, if you say, I'm going to do this, like you said, you made that plan, you put it out there, and you believed enough in that it happens. So it's kind of the same principle. You don't have to believe in. I mean, it's the result. It's believing that can happen. And I think, I think that's a really good. It's just kind of like the placebo effect. If they give you a pill that doesn't do anything, but you believe it does, then your mind is going to. I mean, you could get better. So I don't know. Yeah. What do you think, Cory?
It's interesting that everybody always has negative things to say about the placebo effect, because I'm like, if you give me a sugar pill and the thing that I didn't want goes away, then that's great.
Yeah.
So
I'm all about it.
Yeah, exactly. So,
although I'm not all about like CBD oil, snake oil stuff, but I'm all about what you said. Like placebo is proven scientific.
Placebo, but yeah, I mean, I was kind of saying to Holly, like, it is very interesting that almost every culture, religion, belief system, whatever, has this idea of kind of what you put out into the world is kind of what comes back to you. The law of the harvest, karma, the golden rule, all of those types of ideas are, because I think self-fulfilling prophecy is a thing. Like if I decide that I'm going to suffer as an artist, I can produce a lot of art while I suffer. But if I'm going to decide, like, I'm going to enjoy this as much as I can, and I'm going to fight through the parts that I don't enjoy to get to the parts that I enjoy, I'm still going to produce a lot of art.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like and so you kind of, it's an interesting thing, because it's kind of like choose your delusion. Do you want to believe that, that you can be happy and that it'll produce, some stuff, or do you want to believe that you're going to be miserable and that's what produces some stuff? Because if the end result is you producing some stuff, if it's good stuff, then I would rather have a better experience doing it.
Yeah, dude. People can test this at home. I mean, I wouldn't recommend it, but if you go, okay, like before you hang out with a friend for the next time, or your wife or somebody like that, and you go into that engagement in bad faith, just see how it goes. Like, and I think this is sincerely testable. Like, if I go into a store and I go in with the thought, like, this cashier is going to be a jerk, the likelihood of that cashier being a jerk is a lot higher than if I go in and go like, hey, I'm going to have a good time. This cashier is going to be really kind and professional. Weirdly enough, even if the cashier responds like a jerk, they might kind of get the vibe of me being like, whoa, I'm kind of surprised you're being a jerk right now. Like, I was kind of expecting this to be a cool exchange. Weirdly enough, like, that'll diffuse things. But if you go in with like this intention, you're like, exactly, I knew it. Right. So there, I mean, in debate and in logic and philosophy, that's called poisoning the well, right? You can poison your own well very easily. And if you drop poison in a well, like, you're going to, and you drink from it, you're going to get poisoned.
And you can prove a point that way. And a lot of people enjoy that point more than they enjoy peace.
Yeah.
You know, like if I'm like the world sucks, watch it suck. And then I go and I poison my own well and I get sick and I say, see, the world sucks. It's like, yes, congratulations on proving your point.
Yeah.
But like,
people love to be right. But you can be happy or you can be right. Like, and that's one of the reasons why I try lately not to get too involved in politics, because you're not going to get it. Everyone, it's just much easier to say, okay, you're right. And then it's just, the conversation just kind of stops there and you have to go through all that stuff because they can be right. I don't have an interest in being right. I'd rather be happy. And, so, and it's just, they want to prove themselves. So like you said, if you go in a store and you go, this is going to suck, and it sucks, then you get something out of that because, oh, I was right. But are you happy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, keep in mind, if that like political engagements, like, people with like swastikas on their armbands and they're like asking to round up your family, like, it's pretty reasonable to get political at that point. But yeah, I would like, in general, I would agree with you. I think, you know what I mean? But like, the only reason I bring that up is there's always going to be an exception with it. It's like, there are times where you have to be political. And there are times where, like, being happy is more important. Obviously I don't think we're at the point that I mentioned, but I was just throwing that in because I'm a devil's advocate jerk.
Josh and I have different definitions of politics, of like what actually constitutes politics. Because I think when it comes down to like people rounding up my family, it's not politics.
Well, I think that comes as a result of politics, is my point. Politics is any engagement with a large amount of people that has stakes and differing personalities. And to me, I think you have a political situation when, like, okay, Scott needs a piece of bread. I need a piece of bread. We have one piece of bread. It's not something we can split. We have irreconcilable differences, and we have two people we have to convince. You know what I mean? Whenever you have limited resources that people have to vie for, which is why, like, actually this ties into what we're talking about. That's why what Scott and Cory are talking about is so important, because a lot of times people are looking at like this piece of bread in the scenario I just brought up, and they're like, you got to fight for it, right? It's got to be like Lord of the Flies. It's got to be this ridiculous, crazy thing. And like, I'm going to defeat this person with my arguments. And it gets very, instead of, sometimes people just stepping back and being like, hey, why don't we just split that thing and everybody's good? Like,
whereas I believe that there are very few situations where things are a zero-sum game.
Yeah, I agree with that, actually. Yeah, I do. I think it's hard to deal with people who think of things in a zero-sum game. But I'd agree with you.
Holly says, LOL, Josh talking about the faults of capitalism with bread. I'm excited to take my wheelbarrow full of Deutschmarks to the bakery to get my loaf of bread every day. That's what I'm excited about.
Hey, I am a fan of capitalism, so like that's the weird thing is I like some socialistic systems, but I am not a socialist. I'm not down with that business. Sorry, guys. I'm a leftist, but I'm not a socialist. But I agree with Scott, because like if I get too bogged down, like the thing that's important is to remember people's humanity and also to remember your own sanity, and like those are things worth valuing. And like if you sort of at the cost of your own sanity, like let's say you make the best song ever, that's great, but you're not going to be around to enjoy it, because you're going to have lost your mind. It's always a balance. And I love the idea of intention, because as much as I hate The Secret, I hate that kind of thing, but when I got the Zarek grant, the only reason I got the Zarek grant was I was like, hey, I could get the Zarek grant. Like, I had no reason, like looking back, there is absolutely no reason I should have gotten that thing, because the people who got it were far better, far more progressed than I was. I can look at that now and almost like see myself talking to a kid me and being like, yeah, that's not going to happen, dude. But the belief that it could happen allowed it to be a possibility to happen. If I had had no intention with that, it wouldn't have happened. And that was like partially responsible to my whole art career, the house, being an art director, all of that like stems back to like a stupid little grant when I'm like a dumb college student who made a move I probably shouldn't have made, but I had intention with it. And so like I've experienced that in my own life. Where you're like, I'm going to make this thing happen, and it happens, and it's hard to explain. But I think what Cory was getting at is kind of true too, where it's like some of it is psychological, where it's like if like when you read studies on like cancer patients, I think it's crappy that they put on cancer patients like the idea that they have to be fighters and survivors. Like that's bullshit. Like it's not like people who died of cancer just didn't fight hard enough. Like that's kind of a crappy framing, but right. I understand why they do that framing, because there are statistics on like if people give up, like if you give up the fight, you are way more likely to die. In a scenario where you're like fighting cancer. So it's important. Like the optics are kind of a lie, but they're a real lie. I don't know if that makes sense. It's like, it's not like you not fighting is why that thing happened, but the optics are powerful to fight it.
Yeah. And the reason why that's like what you were talking about with the Zarek grant, why it's not The Secret, is because you could have just said, I'm going to get the Zarek grant, and not done anything to make that happen, and just waited for somebody to call you and like, hey, guess what, Josh? We just heard, a bird told us.
We heard you exist.
You had to go through whatever process that was and put that out there. Same thing, like what you're talking about, the fighting the cancer. Sure, not everyone's going to win that battle, but if you give up, then what are your chances there? So, I mean, chances are if you don't fight at all and you just let it be, you're probably not going to survive. I mean, you have definitely a better chance if you're fighting.
Yeah. And honestly, that goes for a fight too, right? Like it's weird. I remember the first time, and I'm sure you guys might've had this too. I don't know if you guys dealt with bullies. I dealt with bullies a lot as a kid. And the time the bullies stopped was when I started fighting back. And the first time I fought back, I got slaughtered. But the second time I fought back, like I actually landed a few punches and like did some damage and then got slaughtered. But weirdly enough, they were a little more hesitant the next time, because they're like, yeah, last time I got like a bloody nose when I did this thing. So I'm a little more hesitant to mess with the scrawny kid, because like I might come out with some wounds, and the next time I actually I don't know how, but it just kind of stopped because I kind of messed him up. And like, I was in no position to do that. I've been a beanpole my whole life. But what's weird is they stopped bullying. Like, that's how you kind of stop a bully. I mean, I know there's like a PC version of that where it's like you befriend them and like hold hands and stuff, but that's not how bullies work. Like you have to kind of fight bullies most of the time. And that's not true for everybody, but it's like, it's definitely one of those things of like, I think you kind of have to, like you're better off fighting than just kind of giving in most of the time,
Yeah.
even if you lose, because at least you leave with a little dignity,
It also helps to be a little bit nuts.
Yeah, you got to be a little crazy. Well, we're all artists, so we're all a little crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that's where, that's like with bullies and with art. I think, I remember like not getting in too many fights because people were slightly unsure how I would react in that situation. I was a pretty fun-loving kid, but like they were also like, I don't think he understands the rules. Like I'm the kind of guy that just like, if there's something that I don't want to do, I'm like, okay, is this going to go back and forth and it just escalates each time? Because I'll just start at 11 and we'll just be done.
Yeah, I love Cory's told this story of like pranks where like somebody would prank Cory and it's like big mistake because like you prank him at like 2 and the next thing you know, you wake up and you're like on a cliffside. like what is going on? And he's like, ha!
And filled your sink full of flour and turned the water on. Yeah. So like, but like but at the same time, like I love the reckless abandon and creativity where it's like, you know what? I have no business doing this. I don't have the training. I don't have the chops. I don't have the whatever. And I'm going to jump in and make a beautiful mess of it anyway. And like, I think that's like that. I think you can get inside your own head with like imposter syndrome and toxic creativity and comparison and stuff like that. And you get in there and you can talk yourself out of doing stuff. Like I know people that they've got a great idea for a project and it's like, I'm not going to do that project yet because I'm not good enough. And I'm like, you know what? Like, screw that. Get in there and mess it up. Get in there, just fly in there with reckless abandon and you'll be at least better off than never having attempted it.
Yeah, dude.
And that I find so entertaining and fun.
Yeah, there are so many people who hesitate on things because they're afraid of failure.
Yeah.
And I really I feel like it needs to be highlighted, the beauty of a good failure. Like I'll take that over like the safe bet that just is boring and like, yeah, it was safe and it made money, but like, was it art? No, it's elevator music, like I want to see the risky thing where it's like, I don't even know, but I like this because at least they went in like hard. And that's what Scott's talking about too, I think, because it's like, even if like in what Scott's describing, let's say you have this intention, you go out there with intention and that stuff doesn't materialize, it's so much more respectable to go out there with intention and have and at that point, you definitely garner a lot more sympathy too. Not that you're wanting it, but I'm just saying, like, I'm way more prone to be sympathetic to a boxer who's just going to get in the ring and think they're going to do it and just gets knocked out. Like I respect that guy a lot more than the guy on the sidelines being like, yeah, if I were there, I'd be like moving this and boxing that. Like because the guy who went in there with intention, like gave it his all and then failed epically well.
or the guy that, isn't delusional, but is crazy enough to think like, I'm probably going to get my A handed to me here, but yeah, I'm going to go in there at 11 and do it anyway. Cause why not?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think so just to kind of bring it all back, I think, I don't think much has changed for me, but I'm just, I'm still doing about 15 to 20 hours a week of this on top of the full-time job and everything. Right. But, it's just a lot more pleasant and the results don't define me as much, like I don't think I'm seeking the fame and glory. And in the last 2 or 3 years, I have found that even charging huge amounts of money for things isn't super satisfying. Like when I first started getting into this a few years ago, I thought, man, it'd be nice to be able to charge, X amount of money for something, and then now I've surpassed that easily, hands down, over and above what I thought used to be like this like unreachable ceiling of, and then I'm like, I still kind of want to do my own thing, and I hate, like, there's no amount of money or fame that I think will fill a hole, if you don't want that hole to be filled. You know what I mean? And so there's certain things that chasing it is just, it's interesting. It's an interesting pursuit, but it's not satisfying. There was a comment a long time ago that Jim was saying about the artist ego. I do think it is fun and reassuring, and there's some camaraderie and things like that, to like having people recognize that what you do is interesting and good, and there's some value to it. And I do get kind of that social animal kind of reinforcement from it. Absolutely. But it's just an interesting thing to think, like, creation for the sake of creation. There's real value in that. And, money, fame, guilt, fear, whatever, are kind of irrelevant to this process. Yeah. So I don't think I've heard you guys talk that much about the artist ego. It feels really good to know that you're good at something and get recognition. I think the ego is the elephant in the room. And I think, you can call that ego, you can call it pride, you can call it whatever, but there's some huge benefit to, positive reinforcement and improvement, being able to see, like, the last time I tried this, it fell apart and crashed and burned, or it took me twice as long as this time. And you can see improvement, and, and I don't know, having an impact in the world, I think, is valuable, but I just think setting expectations and goals towards things that are outside of my control, I just don't care to do it. I'd be happy as a pig in mud if my work just took off and everybody started watching and everything, but I don't know if it would change what I'm doing or what I want to do, or, it'd be neat and then it'd be over. It's kind of like anything else. Like, I love finishing projects, but once I finish a project, it's over. I want to start another one. So anyway, I don't know. But
yeah, one of the things that I'm trying to do, it's is recognize when you finish a project and celebrate that. It's, because a lot of times we just forget to do that. Me especially, at least up until now, when I finish a project, it's like, okay, on to the next thing. But taking time to celebrate and look at your accomplishment, and before, and just take a little time. So that's definitely something I think we can all do.
Yeah.
I'm gonna misquote it, but like, I mean, I think there's like, and it's tough because, like, I don't want to keep dropping like Bible stuff, but in Ecclesiastes, there's this whole like gist of like the idea of like, there being like, it's sort of written by like a king who had kind of experienced like everything in life, like sensuality, like, building great projects, like all of that stuff, like had been around the world, kind of done everything, and kind of just concluded like the best thing in life is to enjoy the process of working, because you're doomed to labor anyway. You're kind of going to be laboring anyway, like on this earth. So why not enjoy the process? Because you have to labor anyway. And also, why not just like enjoy eating and experiencing things while you're kind of stuck here toiling away? And I don't think that's bad advice. Like, I think that's actually pretty true. Because like either way, if you're gonna have to like till the ground, like either way, it's work. So are you gonna whistle and enjoy it, or are you just gonna like kind of be like, man, it's just toiling? Like, because either way, we have to work, we have to pay taxes, right? Like death and taxes are like the two guaranteed things in life. So, yeah, I mean, perspective's everything on that, because you can be like, I gotta pay taxes. I gotta, I'm gonna like, or you can just be like, oh, this is part of the whole thing, so I'm gonna enjoy it and enjoy that I'm good at it. Like, right? That's another thing I think we all forget to do. Like, we've worked pretty hard to get pretty decent at what we do, and we kind of forget to enjoy that, being like, hey, I got pretty good at drawing faces. Like, that's a pretty cool thing. Like, people who don't draw can enjoy that. Like, we should be able to enjoy it too. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm down with the Gary's comments about the foodie thing. Yeah, because I'm kind of the same way. I mean, I just enjoy all kind. There was at one point I kept this list of all these unique foods that I had tried that and I lost the list. But we went out for dim sum and I tried chicken feet for the first time. I said I'm going to try it. It's like, and then really when I got there, I'm like, this is, I mean, because really when you think about like chicken wings, I mean, what's the difference for me anyway? So yeah, they were good, and I like I just want to experience stuff like that. I'm not into like drugs or anything like that, but like the food, I just want to experience different kinds of food from all different places, and yeah, and I've got friends that is just like, if it's not pizza or hamburger or spaghetti, that they're not going to eat it. I'm like, wow, what a kind of boring existence that is, in my opinion. But anyway, I know that's a little off topic, or maybe not. But
no, I think that touches on
what the topic is at this point, and I'm the one that came up with it. It's been a great talk.
I think that touches on something kind of related, because I feel like one other thing that's cool about what we're talking about is that, first off, it doesn't mean that you're like blatantly ignorant and like constantly happy and like not looking at the ills in life. Like that's definitely not the case, right? You can still sit alongside people when they're struggling, and like walk alongside people, like, but it's also addictive, like what Scott is talking about. Like I, for fun, like a year ago, made an album just for the hell of it, because I was like, I miss playing music, I miss recording an album, I'm going to make an album just for fun. I'm not going to make money off of it. Since I did that, I've had 3 friends start recording music, inspired by me. One of them, who's like a way more famous musician than me. Like, I'm not known for music. This person actually succeeded in music, and yet my stupid attempt at like playing this dumb album like inspired them to get back at it, because they're like, well, and maybe it was just them being like, I don't know if this guy can do, like, like this guy can't even really like play drums, they're all offbeat, and yet he did it. But my point is, that's addictive. Like the creative, the joy of creativity is a lot more addictive than like the negativity of it. Like when I see Scott having fun, like making YouTube videos and like making a bunch of products on Amazon and being pumped about them, it makes me want to make stuff and be pumped about it. And then if I do that, it's going to pass on to other people. That's the karmic thing, right? It's like, it's addictive to do this stuff and have fun with it. Like it really is. And if we forget that, that also is addictive. And so it can start making people feel bummed about like this whole thing that we're doing, which is a pretty cool thing that we do, so. Yeah. I'm sorry. I probably derailed this thing onto like a million tangents.
No. And I think we're getting close to about an hour and a half. So I don't know if there's any last minute things we want to leave on as far as on the topic of toxic creativity.
No,
I'll take that.
I think I've said what I wanted to say. So
yeah, so we'll put a pin in it.
Yeah.
So Josh, where can everyone go to find your stuff? What do you got going on?
All right. Well, if you're not looking for Pokemon cards, I'm going to show these off again, because like Frank is a dude who's just making stuff, and I have to say this made my day. So little Pokemon cards, Frank Salazar, each of us as characters. Look at this, Scott.
And
It like has your name.
And those
And
are
it's got
all
your
hand
jacket.
done. Those are all hand done. Okay.
I mean, I gotta say, like, that's pretty fun. There's Gary, who's in the chats.
Yeah.
Dinosaurs versus Mars bots. You guys should check it out. And then Frank himself. I just gotta say that's cool. That was fun. But yeah, check out 2 Stories, book 1, Amazon. It's at a really reduced rate. And yeah, and then
kidding.
also
I don't know what it is right now, but I looked at it a few days ago and I was like,
yeah.
Really? I think I really need to just pick up some extra copies at that price just to give to people.
Just to hand out. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's crazy.
I could buy them for that price, and I could bring them to the comic store and mark them up and sell. And I could probably make about $5 or $10.
That's true. You can be like, my buddy Josh sent these to me, and like he, yeah. But yeah, it's a crazy. I have no idea, but it's one of those things. It's sad because if I say, I don't know why it's so affordable. It's like they lost their minds. It sounds like a bad sale, but it's true.
Yeah, go check for yourself. But seriously, and I'm wondering if they're just doing that just to maybe that just boosts sales, and just maybe that gets you back on the bestsellers or something. It just seems so. I don't know what the philosophy is behind that, but
yeah, I have no idea. Yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, I'll take that.
But I heard, and I don't know if this is the case. I think I brought this up before. But when Amazon, if it is Amazon making that decision, that from my understanding is that doesn't take away from what you make. It takes away from their profits. I don't know if that's true or whoever's doing that. I've heard that somewhere. I'm not positive. But
I'm not really concerned about it because I've said this.
You want to get your story out there for one.
Yeah, my goal is like, hey, if a reader can get it for $1, like get it for $1, like get it however you want, and then tell me what you think. Keeman was saying he wants to hear that gruff old man tone again. All right. I don't know what the gruff old man tone is, so I'm just gonna. All right, Cory, where can people find your terrible stuff? I'm gonna be like at the polar opposite of what we've been talking about. I'm just gonna be complete negativity.
There we go. I love it. You can find my stuff at which ironically my stuff
it's not terrible, by the way. It's great.
My stuff is extremely cynical. For all of the positivity and everything we talked about tonight, it is a bleak outlook on life.
That's funny, Cory. I think that's a good point. We make dark stuff.
Here I am, like, go do it and be happy about it, and I'm like, the world's gonna end. The robots are taking over, and there are gonna be batteries soon.
Watch out for the algorithms. They're taking your humanity. Yeah.
Anyway, if you'd like to read or see or watch any of that stuff, you can go to CoryKerr.com. Also, I don't know what we're doing with this yet, but I do want to say this because we've got a few people here. I have a few books. These are Jason Brubaker books. And I was talking to him recently because he lives close to me. And the indie review show is going to be somehow getting a lot of these books into your hands. And so if you haven't subscribed yet, go subscribe, and you can go to irsagency.com to kind of see the shows. Gary, who's in the chat, is going to be doing Monday's show. And Josh and I are going to kind of talk off air on like how to get some of this stuff out there. But we're going to see if we can. It might be a Patreon thing. It might be a subscriber thing. I don't know exactly how to work. I'm not going to pay for shipping, but I don't have to pay for the books. So look forward to that and go be involved in the indie review show because you'll want to know about that because these are incredible indie comics. So.
Yeah, I mean,
fill a few gaps in my collection. So
yeah, honestly, whatever we're offering, I might take advantage of it because I love Brubaker's work. So that's awesome.
Yeah,
cool.
All right, yeah, and as far as me, you're on my channel, so this is where you can find me. You can also find a bunch of content on basically everything, art, inspiration, having to do with comics, making money from comics, all that stuff.
Wait, Scott.
Yes.
I don't want to find that stuff. I'm a really big fan of Archie comics, and I love your artwork. And I also just like really want to support the cause of autism. I don't know where to take all these three interests.
I appreciate you setting that up for me, Josh, but I was not going to forget about that. So, yes. So if you go to surprisecomics.com, that's my local comic book store. They also ship nationally, at least, if not internationally, I don't know. But yeah, so I just recently did a variant cover, very exclusive variant cover for Archie Comics for their Betty and Veronica Friends Forever Summer Fun comic book that just came out. I think it's a #1, but it's limited to, this particular version is limited to 250 copies, and it is available for pre-order right now through their website. If you order that before July 4th, $5 of the $15 that you'll pay for this. Like I said, this is an exclusive. This is a very low run comic, so it's, who knows, you maybe if you're looking to make money, you may be able to turn it and flip it. Oh, thank you for bringing that up, because I don't have the wherewithal to do that for my situation right now, but where I'm at. But yeah, so definitely, and I think if you want to get one signed, I think it's an extra $5. That's just what Surprise Comics is charging. I don't typically charge for my autograph, but yeah, I mean, I'm really happy with the way the cover came out. I'm also doing, if you watch the most recent video I put out where you see me doing some of the remarks, so I basically took a lot of the popular Archie comic characters, and I did, like, because this is a ice cream theme, I did popsicle versions. Like if you see the little Archie there, I did one a little larger with Archie, and one with Jughead and Betty and Veronica, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and Josie and the Pussycats, but a bunch of different little remarks where I actually paint right on the cover. And if you see any of those you like, some of them might be already taken because some of them were already commissioned. But if you see any of those you like, if you just contact Surprise Comics, you could probably pick those up. I don't know exactly what those ones are selling for, but that's a way to kind of get some cool original artwork. And I really like doing that. I think I'm going to probably do some of that stuff with Young and the Dead too. I do some remarks on the covers of my Young and the Dead. So that was fun. So definitely check that out. Go to Surprise Comics for that. And like I said, I think I could be off on the dates, but the Saturday around the 4th of July or whatever, I think it's the 3rd. I'm going to be doing a signing over at Surprise Comics, and the next episode I'll have that information pinned down. I'll let you guys know. But if you happen to be in Arizona, if you want to swing by and come see me, I can do sketches. I'll be doing sketches. I'll be selling Young and the Dead. I'll be selling, assuming I get some of them back, I'll be selling some of my comic workbooks where you can, I got thumbnail guides and all kinds of stuff for laying out panels and stuff, different guides and stuff like that. So I'll be there selling those. Sorry. And I just wanted to thank everyone in the chat. We had some great stuff, some really cool comments. And I appreciate everyone leaving comments and keeping the conversation going. And I'm losing my voice. So.
Yeah. And if you lost your voice and we ended up on like 3 different channels or like at a different time or something like that, like how are people going to keep track of this thing? I don't know what they can do to keep track of this whole crazy show we do.
Oh yeah, I did forget because I was losing my voice, so I got distracted. But yeah, so we do this show typically every single week, unless we're off a week. But we try to do it every single week. It does bounce back and forth from my channel to Josh's channel, and we always have a different guest on. This week it's Cory. Next week it'll be somebody else. It'll be on Josh's channel, so he'll probably pick the guest. But it can get a little confusing because it hops around, and it's usually on Thursdays, but every once in a while it might be on a different day. But if you want to know exactly when we're going to go live, who the guest is, whose channel it's on, the best way to do that is join our mailing list. We don't spam you or anything like that. There's a link in the description of this video. Just click on that link, join the mailing list, and then usually about 30 minutes before we go live, we'll send out a little newsletter with a link telling you who the guest is and everything, and you can just click on that link and go right to the page, because YouTube doesn't always notify people when new content comes out. So that's the best way to do it. Once again, thanks to everyone in the chat, and we really do appreciate that, and we'll see everyone next week on Josh's channel. Join that mailing list if you haven't already.